The attacks of Felismon and Holy Draudamon had collided into one another, causing the world to become pixelated in place and break apart into a white void. Though he did overpower the devil-like Digimon, Nicole, Kuzuhamon, Sistermon Noir, and Kulamon were all caught in the void's embrace, glowing and vanishing from sight. When the fighting had stopped, Sistermon Blanc had come to see what happened, finding the area slowly returning to normal, with the void gone, but the area still pixelated and slowly coming into focus again. She was confused as to what happened and tried calling out to her sister Noir, but didn't get any response. And we then cut to a sign that read, "Welcome to Valmonte" on it. We then move over to find Nicole waking up in a field with his body aching, wondering just what happened exactly, and he stood looking around, seeing the city, his city, where he lived before becoming Digidestined, wondering if all that was a dream or if it actually happened. He charged his blaze of Digivolution and became Shada Nekomon again, and confirming that it wasn't a dream after all. That did leave the question, what happened to the others? He'd have to figure that out as he went, and began moving towards town, returning to human form again, so as to not freak anyone out. He'd heard someone talking about losing 3 people during the strange event, and walked over, seeing that his mom and sister were there with a few other people, and so went over to speak to them, making the person talking stop to look at him. Nicole then waved, greeting them, saying he's fine, as are Kat and Lucas. His mom and sister knocked over their chairs, getting up so fast as they ran over to hug him, crying, glad to see that he was alive and well. The other people there asked how he knew that Kat and Lucas were okay, and where they are, and just flooding him with questions. Our main Digidestined telling them to calm down and he will explain. Taking a deep sigh, Nicole began to explain to them what happened, where they went, and what's been going on since then. He'd explained about how they were trying to stop a war between knights and demons, and how Lucas and Kat had joined up with each side to find out what exactly started it and hopefully find a way to stop it. Kat's father asked why they had to be the ones to do that and why he was able to come back but they couldn't, with Nicole explaining that no one else could and that it was an accident that he'd come back to the human world. It was hard to believe, and it looked as though they weren't fully convinced, though when he digivolved in front of them into Shada Nekomon, they were a lot more willing to listen. Shada Nekomon said that both Lucas and Kat could also digivolve, though they had different forms than he did, and that they had friends that could also join them in combat to help protect them. As the multi-tool beeped and he'd answered it, seeing that it was Lucas calling, he'd patched in Kat too and asked what they'd found. The two began to explain what they had learned to Nicole, and he told them to keep up the good work, then showed them that he was in the human world somehow with their parents, and asked if there was anything that they wanted to say while on call. They were able to tell their parents not to worry because they would find a way home and stop this war, and that they were safe despite that, along with saying that they loved their family. After a bit of time letting them talk, they eventually ended the call so the Demon Lord and Royal Knight wouldn't get suspicious of their activities, and Nicole had said he'd find a way back somehow. After that, they cut the transmission, and his mother asked if he was really going back to wherever that place was, and he said he was, but didn't know how he'd find a way though. Shada Nekomon's ears began to twitch as he'd heard someone calling out for help, and ran off towards the sound since he recognized it, and found Kulamon flying away from some people chasing him, telling them to go away, he wasn't an experiment, and seeing Nicole, the little Digimon flew over to him, hiding in Shada Nekomon's jacket. The people demanded that the creature be turned over to them for study, though Nicole ignited his Shada Enigma and warned them to go away and leave both him and Kulamon alone, slashing a claw mark into the ground as a warning, making them run off, as the little Digimon then thanked him for his help, with Nicole's mom and sister coming over, asking what that was. Nicole returned to human form and showed them Kulamon, with his sister squealing about how adorable the little Digimon was, scaring them a bit, with our main Digidestined telling her not to do that, she'll scare him, and that Kulamon was a kid, making her apologize for scaring him. Nicole then introduced Kulamon to his mom and sister. Our main Digidestined asked Kulamon if he knew of anyone else that was there, but the little Digimon wasn't sure, since he woke up on his own and tried to ask for help, but those bad people tried to grab him, which scared Kulamon and made him run away from them. Sighing, Nicole told them that they'd best stay close to him, with the little Digimon nodding. Nicole's mother suggested that they go home and rest for now, and he'd agreed with that, going home with them back to his place, carrying Kulamon with him. As they went off upstairs to his old bedroom, Andy stretched and messaged Kuzahamon asking where she was and if she was okay, then waited for a response from her as Kulamon started to play with some old toys that he'd used for decoration after Nicole got too old to play with them himself.